Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Hoot. When we left off, Roy was using the Mother Paula's building opening as his current event story, and he was filling in his classmates about the owls, and they seemed very upset. How can the pancake people get away with this? Demanded another student. I don't know, Roy said, but it's not legal and it's not right. Here, Mr. Ryan interrupted firmly. Hold on, Roy. What do you mean it's not legal? You need to be careful when you're making those kinds of serious allegations. Excitedly, Roy explained that the burrowing owls were protected by state and federal laws, and that it is illegal to harm the birds or disturb active burrows without getting special government permits. All right, fine, said Mr. Ryan, but what does the Pancake Company have to say about this? I'm sure they have the proper permission. The file is missing, Roy cut in, and the foreman tried to tell me that there were no owls on the property, not a single one, which is a lie. The class started buzzing again. So tomorrow at lunch, Roy continued, I'm going out there to show, just because I want the Mother Paula's people to know that somebody in Coconut Cove cares about those birds. Mr. Ryan cleared his throat. This is a sticky situation, Roy. I know how upset and frustrated you must feel, but I have to remind you that students aren't supposed to leave school property. Then I'll get a note from my parents, Roy said. The teacher smiled. That would be the way to do it. The class was expecting him to say more, but he didn't. Look, Roy said, every day we've been reading about regular people, ordinary Americans who make history because they got up and they fought for something they believed in. Okay, I know we're just talking about a few puny little owls, and I know everybody is crazy about Mother Paula's pancakes, but what's happening out there is just plain wrong. It's so wrong. Roy's throat was dry as prairie dust, and his neck felt hot. Anyway, he muttered, it's tomorrow at noon. And then he sat down. The classroom fell quiet, a long, heavy silence that roared in Roy's ears like a train. Chapter 19. I'm worried about the owls, Officer Delinko told Curly. What owls? Darkness had fallen on the construction site, and swallows were swooping back and forth, chasing mosquitoes. Tomorrow was the big day. Come on, I saw them with my own eyes, the patrolman said. Isn't there a way to, move them somewhere safe? Curly said, you want my advice? Don't think about it. Put it out of your mind, is what I do. I can't. That's the trouble. Curly jerked a thumb towards the trailer. You want to take a break? I rented the new Jackie Chan. Officer Delinko could not understand how the foreman could be so casual about burying owl dens. He wondered if it was just a macho act. Did you tell them that the birds are out there? He asked. Tell who? The Pancake Company. Maybe they don't know. Curly snorted. You kidding me? They know everything. He said, look, it ain't our problem. Even if we wanted to, there's nothing we could do. Curly went off to the trailer while Officer Delinko resumed patrolling the grounds. Whenever he passed a burrow, he shined his flashlight inside, but he saw no owls. He hoped the birds had already sensed that something awful was about to happen and had flown away, though it seemed improbable. Shortly after midnight, Officer Delinko heard Curly come out and shout his name. The foreman claimed he'd been awakened by a noise of somebody that sounded like somebody climbing the fence. With his gun drawn, the policeman searched the area thoroughly. He checked the roof of the trailer and underneath it, too, and all he found was little opossum tracks in the sand. Sounded way bigger than an opossum, Curly said grumpily. Later, as Officer Delinko was retrieving his third thermos of coffee from the squad car, he thought he saw a series of small white flashes at the other end of the property. It reminded him of the bright popping he had seen at late-night car accidents, while the police department photographer was snapping pictures. But when Officer Delinko ran to when he had seen the flashes, he found nothing out of the ordinary. It must have been a burst of heat lightning, he thought, reflecting off of low clouds. The rest of the night passed uneventfully. The patrolman stayed wide awake. At breakfast, Roy asked his mother if he could leave school during lunch. He figured she'd be more likely than his father to say yes, but she surprised him. I don't know if it's such a good idea for you to go to the Mother Paula's groundbreaking. But, Mom, let's see what your dad thinks. Oh, well, thought Roy, that'll be the end of that. As soon as Mr. Everhart sat down at the table, Mrs. Everhart informed him of Roy's request. Sure, why not, Mr. Everhart said. I'll write him a note. Roy's jaw hung open. He had expected the opposite reaction from his father. But you're going to have to promise to behave, Mr. Everhart said, no matter how ticked off you get. I promise. Later, his father put Roy's bicycle in the trunk of his car and drove Roy to Trace Middle. As he dropped him off in front of the school, Mr. Everhart said, You think your friend will be at the ceremony today, Beatrice's stepbrother? Probably, Roy said. It's pretty risky. I know, Dad. I tried to tell him. You be careful, Mr. Everhart said firmly, and be smart. Yes, sir. Beatrice Leap was waiting outside Roy's homeroom. Her curly hair was damp as if she had just gotten out of the shower. Well, she said, I got a note. How about you? Beatrice displayed a crumpled paper napkin that had been scrawled upon in red ink. I woke up my old man to ask him. He was so far out of it he would have signed anything, she said. I should have written myself a check for $1,000. So I guess we're all set for noon, Roy said. He lowered his voice. I went to see your brother. He threw me out of the truck. Beatrice shrugged. What can I say? Sometimes he's impossible. She fished in her purse and came out with the camera belonging to Roy's mother. He dropped us off at the house late last night after Lana and Dad went to bed. He said he got the pictures that you wanted. I tried to take a look, but I couldn't figure out how to work this darn thing. Wordlessly, Roy grabbed the camera and stashed it in his locker. Keep your fingers crossed, Beatrice said, before melting into the stream of students and disappearing down the hall. Roy spent the rest of the morning lost in excited distraction, wondering if his plan might actually work. At 10:45, a black stretch limo pulled up to the empty lot of Woodbury and East Oriole. The driver got out and opened one of the doors. Nothing happened for several moments, and then a tall man with wavy silver hair emerged, squinting into the sun. He wore pressed white trousers and a dark blue blazer with an emblem on the breast pocket. The man glanced around impatiently behind the enormous tinted glasses. Crisply, he snapped his fingers as Officer David Delinko, who was unlocking his squad car. The patrolman failed to notice he was being summoned. He was knocking off work after 14 straight hours at the construction site. Curly had gone home to shower and shave, so Officer Delinko had stayed to keep an eye on the earth-moving machines, which had been refitted with new seats. Now that the foreman had returned, dressed in a coat and tie of all things, the policeman was leaving the premises. He had no desire to hang out for this ground-breaking nonsense. Officer! The silver-haired man beckoned insistently. Yo, officer, over here. Officer Delinko approached the limousine and asked what was wrong. The man introduced himself as Chuck E. Muckle, vice president of something or other for Mother Paula's All-American Pancake Houses, Inc. In a confidential tone, he added, we need some discreet assistance here. Well, I'm off duty, Officer Delinko told him, but I'd be glad to call for another unit. He was so exhausted from lack of sleep that he barely had enough energy to carry on a conversation. Do you happen to know who is sitting in this car? Chuck Muckle said, nodding towards the limo. No, sir. Miss Kimberly Lou Dixon. That's nice, said Officer Delinko blankly. The Kimberly Lou Dixon. Well, what do you know? Chuck Muckle thrust his ruddy face closer. You've got no idea who I'm talking about, do you, officer? Not a clue. Never heard of the lady. The company vice president rolled his eyes and proceeded to explain who Kimberly Lou Dixon was and why she traveled all the way from Beverly Hills, California to Coconut Cove, Florida. And right this minute, Chuck Muckle said, she rather urgently needs a powder room. A powder room? Officer Delinko repeated quizzically. A place to powder her nose, a place to freshen up. Chuck Muckle erupted in exasperation. Is this really such a difficult concept to grasp, officer? Let me put this in language that you can understand. She needs a potty, okay? And we're going to stop there.